You simply cannot continue to build pipelines, to continue to frack oil.
Tonight, pipeline canceled. President-elect Joe Biden states one of his first orders of business will be to stop construction of the Keystone XL pipeline.
Our numbers were as high as, I think, just shy of 600 people actively positive in our community, and it was pretty bad.
And a small Alberta community is reeling from hundreds of cases of COVID-19. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. In the United States, President-elect Joe Biden is seen to be making good on a campaign promise. News broke over the weekend that he will cancel construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. As expected, this was welcome news to some. Jamie Pashagumskum brings us reaction from Ottawa.
We have a real chance because this is a president who has said, President-elect who has made it very clear that the climate is going to be on the top of his agenda.
Green Party leader Anna May Paul called it a chance of a lifetime for the climate crisis. She criticized Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, saying they're not serious about addressing climate change.
You simply cannot continue to build pipelines, to continue to frack oil, to continue to refuse to set any kind of target that even matches our international peers, and at the same time say that you are a climate warrior.
The Keystone Pipeline was designed to carry bitumen from Alberta to the Gulf of Mexico. The Green Party say green economy jobs pay more and use existing skills. Every $1 million invested in green economy, you get 8 jobs out of it, as opposed to only 3 jobs from investing in fossil fuels.
I will say directly to people in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Newfoundland and Labrador, all of the places that are particularly dependent upon oil and gas exploration, please do not allow yourselves to be fooled. These commitments to these projects are not being done with you in mind. They're being done in order to extract profits for the oil and gas corporations.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says the oil industry is volatile and jobs come and go. Where going green will create lasting jobs for the long term as well as the short term.
Well, there's a number of deep oil wells across Alberta that need to be closed up properly, cleaned up properly, and can be transitioned immediately to geothermal energy. Those are jobs that can be created right now.
Singh says Biden's decision is an indication of the direction Canada needs to be heading into the future, and that we need to diversify our economy and invest in good jobs. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Jamie. The Canadian press is reporting that both the federal Liberals and the Conservatives, as well as the Alberta and Saskatchewan governments, want Biden to reconsider killing the pipeline. They argue that Canadian oil is better than foreign oil and cite the jobs in their support for that pipeline to move ahead. Well, the Mississauga community in Kawartha Lakes region of Ontario has put a stop to construction on their territory. Annette Francis explains why.
This small group of Kawartha Anishinaabe members are taking a final stand against any further demolition or repairs of this dam without their consultation. They put a halt to any work on the dam at Lock 28 since it began 5 days ago.
We're here to protect our lands from Parks Canada and the construction workers. They've continued and they've started construction here without our consultation. And that's what we're here to protect the land. It's about the consultation and the lack of the consultation.
Noden Webb is one of 5 councillors for the Mississauga community, located a half-hour's drive north of Peterborough. He says they don't have a large land base, so they're directly impacted by any construction.
They took all this, they've cut down all the trees, really nice old trees. You can see this whole strip. They've cleared it, clear cut, straight to the end. All of it vandalism to our people, trespassing.
Lawyer Chris Reed supports the community's decision to step in. He says the community has had a long history of being pushed aside.
When this dam was built in 1912, their ancestors were living right there. They were living there because they had been kicked off reserves. They'd been declared non-status under the enfranchisement policy, which has now been described as genocide by this same federal government. So they were moved off their reserves and they settled here, which was still their land, indigenous land that they had used for centuries for fishing and hunting and so on. So they built their homes here. The government came along in 1912 and pushed them off this again, pushed them off and said, we're building a dam here. So they built their homes where they are now, which is pretty much adjacent to the dam. And ever since, the government of Canada has regarded them as nothing more than squatters with no rights. They've gone to court before. They went to court in 2002 and they won. The court agreed that they are a First Nation community and that they have treaty rights. And the government of Canada simply chooses to ignore that decision.
And for the members of the Kawartha Anishinaabe, that's the biggest issue.
Oh, we understand that the dam is over 100 years old, and as with anything, it degrades and it needs construction and infrastructure repair. And we certainly aren't opposed to that. We're really opposed to the lack of consultation and really the disrespect given by Parks Canada. And quite frankly, it's illegal. It's completely illegal.
Webb says his community will stay put until Parks Canada makes an effort to include them at the table. APTN contacted Parks Canada for comment, but did not receive a response by airtime. Annette Francis, APTN National News on the Trent Severn Waterway.
Back in October, APTN reported on the high number of people who were infected with COVID-19 in the Musqueam community south of Edmonton. At the time, there were 37 active cases. Today, there are hundreds. APTN's Chris Stewart has an update.
Recent numbers for the Musqueam community are not good. The community consists of 4 reserves: Louisville Tribe, Montana First Nation, Ermineskin Cree Nation, and the largest, Samson Cree Nation. Nearly 10% of the 18,000 members have had the virus at some point. 1,710 cases as of Sunday. Samson Chief Vernon Saddleback is concerned.
Our numbers were as high as, I think, just shy of 600 people actively positive in our community, and and it was pretty bad.
8 deaths have been recorded. 3 confirmed deaths were under 40 years of age.
86 is the average age that we're losing people. On reserve, unfortunately, the average age is 69.
Randy Littlechild is the executive director of the Musqueam Health Authority. He says some members do not want to isolate in the available trailers. That is a problem, with some houses having 10 to 15 members.
We try to encourage them, but some people don't really want to leave their families. They don't want to leave their home.
But there is some good news. The numbers are dropping. As of Sunday, there are 303 active cases. Chief Saddleback is hopeful the vaccine will help further.
One of the words I've learned in this whole pandemic, isahuan. In Cree, it means patience.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
As COVID vaccines poke more and more arms across the country, many wonder when they can get in line, while others aren't even sure that they want it. Dr. Ibrahim Khan is the Saskatchewan Medical Officer of Health for Indigenous Services Canada and joins me now with answers to some of your COVID vaccine questions. Dr. Khan, last week we talked about the COVID-19 vaccine rollout in Manitoba with Dr. Anderson here in Winnipeg. We're going to go west this week. What's in store for the rollout in Saskatchewan?
So vaccine is the COVID vaccine, both the Pfizer and Moderna is currently is being rolled out in Saskatchewan First Nations, and it's already been in circulation in many provincial sort of jurisdictions. But since last week, it's now been, since last week, particularly in the South Central area, but in the North, the vaccination started way earlier. So currently, a number of South Central First Nations communities and the Northern communities are getting the COVID vaccine. So starting with the priority groups that has been identified here provincially, we also were able to get the 40-year-old and above Indigenous people also prioritized for the COVID vaccine. Mm-hmm. So with that good news, Saskatchewan is the first province to prioritize Indigenous people 40 and above for the COVID vaccine. So that is certainly another sort of added news to the overall COVID vaccine situation in Saskatchewan.
Yeah. How are the numbers in Saskatchewan? Are they leveling out?
No, unfortunately not. The numbers are way up compared to the last year, and especially after the New Year and Christmas break. There was a little bit of dip in the number of tests and the number of cases, but we knew that is going to happen.
Yeah.
But in the last 2-3 weeks, we have seen a huge jump in the number of cases. So currently, and I'm just sharing with you the First Nations number, particularly the First Nations population on reserve in Saskatchewan is of today 3,500 cases to date or diagnosed in First Nations communities. And of that, majority are still active, and we have 22 unfortunate deaths due to COVID situation, but also the hospitalization rates and the number of people in ICU is another concerning indicator we are watching in the last 3-4 weeks.
We were hearing last week too in northern Manitoba, lots of people had not been isolating and staying away over the break. There had been gatherings in Manitoba. It's the same thing. We're seeing a spike in numbers. We had a lot of questions from viewers with regards to the COVID vaccine that hopefully you can answer for us. One viewer asked, can I visit my 94-year-old mother after she's vaccinated, or do we both need to be vaccinated in order to see each other?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and my advice on that is that the grandma first definitely need to be vaccinated, but any visitors, and particularly the family, the caregiver also need to be prioritized and vaccinated. So in this case, both are critically very important that they have the vaccine. Also, you have to wait a little bit before you get after you get the second dose of the vaccine. So the immunity takes some time to develop after the second dose. So I would suggest that waiting for a couple of weeks after getting the second dose, then certainly if the grandma and the caregiver or the family members want to visit, certainly that can happen. But I would still suggest that the COVID precaution should be observed, particularly, the fact that you have the vaccine and immunity does develop. But still masking, distancing, hand washing, those sort of things, and particularly if you're symptomatic with whatever sort of infections, whether it's viral or bacterial, I would suggest that caution should be observed while visitation.
Another question, somebody asked, could people who refuse to be vaccinated be restricted from things like travel or anything else? Is that something that's being discussed in the medical community?
Well, a lot of things is going to be changing as we roll out the vaccine in a broader population. So certainly some things may change. It's hard to say that at this moment, but what I know is that vaccine is certainly a good thing to have if you're traveling to any country or any area domestically or internationally. But if somebody refused the vaccine, certainly the test of COVID test certainly would be required. Going to your destination, particularly, you would have to check that which country are you going to. So every country has a different requirements, and Canada has requirements on arrival that you should have a COVID test results within the last 3 days available on arrival. So those sort of requirements are clear at this moment, and certainly as we move, we will see what other requirements would be in place for travelers if they're going out or coming in.
Well, Dr. Khan, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to chat with us. We really appreciate this insight.
Thank you so much. Take care.
It's time for us to take a break, but we have lots of news still ahead, so stay with us. And here's a look at something that we're working on for you.
I'm Charlotte Morit-Jacobs. It's a vaccine campaign unlike anything the Northwest Territories has ever seen. This week, APTN National News will check in with who's receiving the shot, who's administering it, and those easing anxiety while helping their community.
And so we kind of have to demonstrate on what part of their body it is, like say your elbow between here and here, right there, like no gros, like your arm.
That's this week on APTN National News.
Welcome back. A little known fact: during World War II, the federal government took over Enoch Cree Nation land to use as a bombing range not far from Edmonton. Now, nearly 8 decades later, the nation has reached a settlement with Canada over the illegal lease of that land. Here's a look back at a story we did on this little known bit of Canadian war history and how it led to a recent $91 million settlement.
From 1941 to 1945, 2 sections of land making up 1,200 acres of Enoch land were illegally leased by the federal government to be used as a practice bombing range during the war. This included Lake Yugao, which was the community's source of water. The lake never recovered, and to this day, there are unexploded bombs still there. In 2014, Enoch's golf course closed down due to safety concerns when live rounds were discovered. The federal government still denies live rounds were used. The nation has been in negotiations with the Crown since 2007. Enoch Chief Billy Morin says the land was illegally used.
The illegal part of it was for any lease of this type, there was to be a community vote, and there was no community vote. So that's the legal ramification that we explored resolving this claim. And from 1941 to 45, there was approximately, at our best guess estimate, about 100,000 rounds of ammunition, practice bombs dropped into our lake on the 2 sections of land.
Bombs that destroyed the lake. Today, 75 years later, there are no fish. The water is unsafe to drink. The 1,200 acres are mostly abandoned. In early November, the federal government and the Enoch Cree Nation announced a $91 million settlement. Chief Morin says the money will be used several ways.
Loss of use for our economic development purposes, notably the golf courses on those 2 sections of land. Some of it will go into a per capita distribution for the nation members themselves, and some of it will go into band program funding to upkeep some of our services that were lost on those two areas of land. But the primary thing that the $91 million was made up of was land reclamation.
Reclaiming the land and Lake Yugao, removing the bombs still there, cleaning the lake. Chief Morin says it will take many years. And there are members who remembered the bombings who have passed on.
Growing up in Enoch, we had a lot of people pass away who talked about wanting to see this claim done, and unfortunately they're not here anymore. So for the elders that are still here, I'm just glad that they're here to see a day that the claim has been resolved and they can take that closure and we can move forward in a good way.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
It's time for us to take another break, but still ahead, from street life to recovery to being a celebrated carver, we've got one man's journey to share.
Doing this art is, my mind just turns off and the clock just disappears. And by the time I'm like, wow, it's time to go home. And I don't really want to go home. I want to keep carving it.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. This calming blue view along a country road in the Aram of Hazeldale was sent to us by Jacqueline Trohack. Hazeldale is located just off Highway 49 in eastern Saskatchewan. Keep those pictures coming to share at aptn.ca, and your photo could be our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we got -5 in showers for Fredericton, -8 in snow for Charlottetown, -11 in snow for Happy Valley Goose Bay, -22 sunshine for La Grande River, -7 in snow for Montreal and Saint-Jean-Vite, Val-d'Or -11 in snow. Snow as well for Sault Ste. Marie and North Bay, both -6. Kapuskasing, snow and -15, sunshine and -19 in Big Trout Lake. Pukatawaga -17 with a mix of sun and cloud. God's Lake and Norway House both -18 and sunny. -16 with some snow for Winnipeg, -15 for Barons River and sunshine there. -3 in snow for Regina, -3 in sunshine for Saskatoon. -1 and sunny for Meadow Lake, -11 and snow for Stony Rapids. +5 and snow for Peace River and Grand Prairie. 2 in sunny for Red Deer and Medicine Hat, 5 in sunshine for Lethbridge. Rain and 6 degrees for Vancouver and Campbell River, 2 cloudy for Quesnel. 0 and some showers for Smithers, -2 and snow for Dease Lake. Whitehorse 0, sunny skies, 0 but snow for Watson Lake. Norman Wells snow and -6, Wrigley -7 and sunny. Polytech -15 and snow, same with Colville Lake. Clear and -29 in Cambridge Bay. Whale Cove -27 with sunny skies. Igloolik -11 in snow. Tallyoak -24 and clear. Pangertung mix of sun and cloud and 1. After spending years living on the streets as a drug user, a Yukon man is making a name for himself throughout his stunning carvings and engravings. As Sarah Connors tells us, art and a little help from his community helped get him clean while discovering his full potential.
A few years ago, Thomas Fawcett was a drug addict living on the streets of Vancouver. Now he's a highly regarded carver.
Still has some cracks, but I got a lot of cracks too.
Fawcett is a carver for Carcross and Tagish First Nation. He works alongside master carver Keith Wolf-Smarch, helping with totem poles and pieces like this caribou. He's also a talented engraver.
You have to heat it up with a blowtorch till it glows red.
It's a career path the Tlingit man never thought possible. Fawcett grew up in BC, though his mother is from the Yukon First Nation. After an operation left him in extreme pain several years ago, Fawcett turned to drugs. He eventually found himself living on Vancouver's notorious East Hastings Street.
And I got addicted to heroin and meth. And then you just kind of wind up on the street because you don't spend any money on anything else but that.
He says the experience made him lose hope.
I was ready to commit suicide. I was in so much pain and suffering.
Suicidal and with nowhere to go, Fawcett went to his mother's First Nation in 2016. He spent a summer working in the carving shed, where his talent led to the First Nation putting him through art school in BC at age 42.
I never thought I'd ever go back to school. I always thought that, that was out of reach for me.
Afterwards, the nation offered him a full-time carving job. He says the work has helped him remain drug-free for 5 years.
Doing this art is, my mind just turns off and the clock just disappears. And by the time I'm like, wow, it's time to go home. And I don't really want to go home. I want to keep carving, right? So we're just doing it on birch. And
now he wants to bring back traditional Northwest art to the community.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite piece.
Like this raven rattle.
If you can make a raven rattle, you're a carver. Because they're really complicated, but they're always the same.
He also wants to give back to the First Nation that's helped him, like providing carving lessons to anyone who's willing to learn.
This is how you do it the right way. Just remember that.
While Fawcett says some days are still a struggle, his community and his job give him strength to keep on the right track.
It's really good healing. It's therapy. And it's healed me so much from all the things all the trauma that I've had and stuff in my life.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Carcross.
Love it when we get to leave you with a story like that. Well, we are all out of time. It's to kick off your news for the week. Get your APTN News app if you haven't already on your phone. You can keep up on the news. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us.